Imagine you're on a train, alone. You can't move. And right next to you, a strange man leans in a little too close, smiles with confidence, and won't stop talking. You don't want to listen. You don't know how to get away without making a scene. No one steps in. And then your eyes meet someone else's across the aisle, someone who could help, but doesn't. That's exactly what this 19th century painting captures. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary, almost harmless scene, but if you look closely, you'll notice something else. A detail the artist left hidden in plain sight, one that completely changes the story. Even though this painting was created over 100 years ago, it reflects a situation that still feels uncomfortably real today. A scene full of tension, awkward silence, and the pressure to either look away or act. But before we get to that, you'll want to hear the fascinating story behind it. In the mid-19th century, a rather peculiar genre of painting emerged, known as the problem picture. These works were characterized by their depiction of ambiguous or uncomfortable scenes between multiple characters, often alluding to social taboos or unsettling situations. Rather than offering a closed narrative, these paintings invited the viewer to interpret what was happening, to fill in the story themselves. There was usually an enigma at the heart of these scenes, a letter whose contents remain hidden, a child being scolded without explanation, or a couple engaged in a tense conversation with an unspoken backstory that could only be guessed. This type of painting draws an interesting parallel to the problem play of Victorian theatre, where social or moral dilemmas were also explored through stories deliberately left open to audience interpretation. Common themes included the role of women, class divisions, and moral ambiguity. In painting, the static nature of the medium meant the viewer had to do most of the work, spotting symbolic clues in the image and piecing them together. The titles artists gave their works were often suggestive, like the letter or the departure, hinting at the mystery the viewer was meant to unravel. In 1874, a painter named Berthold Woltze unveiled The Irritating Gentleman, a work that fits perfectly within the problem picture genre. The scene depicts a situation that many, especially women unfortunately, will recognize as uncomfortably familiar. A middle-aged man, likely a tourist or traveler, is enthusiastically pestering a young woman traveling alone in a train carriage. With his left arm stretched across the back of the seat, he leans toward her, cigar in hand, wearing an exaggerated smile framed by a flashy mustache and thick sideburns. His oversized red bow tie only reinforces the impression of a loudmouth, or at the very least, a ridiculous man. In stark contrast, the young woman conveys modesty and vulnerability. Dressed in black, possibly in mourning, she immediately evokes the viewer's sympathy. Her solitude makes her an obvious target for the unwanted attention of the man beside her. Woltze adds a powerful emotional dimension through a carefully placed detail, a tear sliding down the woman's cheek. Her expression, combined with the way she looks directly at us, intensifies the emotional tension, as if pleading for someone to step in and help her. This gaze confronts the viewer, generating a sense of helplessness in the face of what's being portrayed. And yet, there's a subtle element in the composition that changes everything. A tiny detail, easy to overlook, that, once noticed, completely transforms the meaning of the entire scene. But before we reveal it, I'd like to remind you that if you're passionate about art, you'll find a link in the description to our website. There, you'll discover over 600 carefully curated historical artworks, perfect for starting your own art collection. We offer free worldwide shipping, and every purchase is a museum-quality reproduction that stays as true as possible to the original. Huge thanks to everyone who supports the channel by purchasing these prints. Your support is what allows me to keep creating videos like this every week. So, if you'd like to support the channel and bring a piece of art into your home, the link is waiting for you in the description. Now then, let's continue. Berthold Woltze was a German painter best known for his genre scenes, often marked by a blend of nostalgia and everyday life. Among all his works, The Irritating Gentleman has become his most recognizable, thanks to its ability to portray an awkward yet instantly relatable situation, one that viewers can immediately connect with. The male character is easily identifiable, a persistent, ordinary man whose behavior crosses the line into intrusion. But what truly heightens the discomfort is the confined space of the train carriage, which leaves no room for escape. The young woman, aside from being alone, is visibly burdened, with a large bag by her side, and, on the seat in front of her, rolled up fabrics and a wooden box signed by the artist himself, emphasizing her vulnerability even further. Though the setting is public, as suggested by the presence of a third distracted passenger in the background, it offers no comfort. On the contrary, it adds a layer of social pressure. The woman is expected to remain composed and proper. In a time when a woman's reputation was fragile and social etiquette dictated everything, any impulsive reaction could easily backfire. The painting captures a moment filled with tension and uncertainty. It prompts the viewer to ask questions. What is she feeling in that moment? What are his intentions behind that smile? It's this emotional and narrative ambiguity that makes the painting a quintessential example of the problem picture genre. However, despite the young woman's downcast expression, there are subtle hints that suggest a possible twist in the scene. A seemingly minor detail, the hat resting on her lap and her hand reaching toward it, may actually be hiding the true meaning of this painting. Some have interpreted this gesture as the prelude to a silent yet forceful response. She might be about to draw a hat pin concealed within the hat, either to defend herself or to send an unmistakable message of discomfort to the man beside her. During the 1870s, women's fashion in Western Europe began to shift. Traditional bonnets tied under the chin were replaced by more modern, rounded hats. To keep them in place, women began using long, decorative hat pins. Over time, these hat pins became sturdier and gained a second purpose: self-defense. In crowded cities, where unwanted advances and inappropriate contact were common, there were numerous recorded instances of women using these objects to repel men, both in Europe and the United States. The injuries caused by these pins, whether intentional or accidental, became so widespread that regulations emerged. Some laws required the tips to be covered. Others limited the length of the pins due to safety concerns. In this context, it's entirely plausible that the woman in the painting is preparing to act. If she's indeed reaching for a hat pin, her gaze takes on new meaning. What once seemed like a silent plea could now be a steely stare of determination, a readiness to put an end to this distressing moment. The glimmer in her eyes, once mistaken for sadness, now feels icy, and the tear teetering on the edge no longer invites pity. This possibility transforms the narrative completely. The young woman is no longer a passive victim, but an ambiguous figure whose next move remains unknown. If she does react with violence, the viewer is left with a moral dilemma. Is her response justified? Should we empathize with such an action? As a true problem picture, the painting refuses to offer clear answers. The emotional conflict remains unresolved, loyalties are blurred, and we're left suspended in a morally grey space. In doing so, Berthold Woltze creates more than just an image. He builds a scene that demands the viewer's participation without the promise of a clear conclusion. And this is where your interpretation comes in. Does the woman's discomfort give her the right to defend herself with violence, or do you see it simply as a moment of silent frustration, one where she weeps because she can't react? Tell me in the comments, what ending do you imagine for this painting?